Hello, and welcome to Conversations from the Crossroads. I'm your host, Ian C. Powell. Recently, I sat down with Travis Hoisher of 614 Magazine and Megan Ralston of Columbus Alive to talk about their involvement in the Columbus art scene, from comedy and photography to music and painting. Please like and subscribe. More to come in the future with a slightly different format. But enjoy this first conversation. Thank you. I'm with Megan Ralston and Travis Hoisher.
Yep. Nailing it.
Yeah, this is why two cameras. So I can edit.
That's right.
And alright, we're going to talk about hear everything. Your experience with the local arts community to start with?
Yeah, we both have kind of like several overlaps with the arts community.
The overlaps are what make it interesting.
You want us to just tell you what we do? Should we start by describing what we do?
Yeah.
I'm the editor-in-chief for 614 Magazine for the last 5 years, which is my day job, I guess you could say. But I've been doing stand-up comedy off and on for 15 years, so I end up kind of in a lot of these little middle ground things where I'm covering the arts, but also kind of participating in the arts. And, you know, sometimes I'm booking a show for me, sometimes I'm booking a show for the magazine. They all kind of like weave in and out. So that's what I do.
I'm a photographer at Columbus Alive for about 3 years now, and I do a majority of their entertainment booking, and then festivals, lots of them. And a lot of my overlaps are between music and then photography and fine art.
She's also a former book publisher / photographer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't forget
The
about
Hot
that.
17.
It was like
She and I worked. See, that's how much all these scenes kind of connect. Like, I met her as a photographer at a bar.
Yeah.
And then eventually, she did some shooting for us at the magazine. I did some writing for a music book she created called The Hot 17, and now we're all doing separate stuff, but still very
met through Hot 17.
Yeah, we're still very entangled.
That still just kind of blows me away. That was able to help anybody.
Sure.
That just for it to be able to help one person was kind of my whole goal to start with, but that it was able to help multiple people, it just seems kind of unreal to me.
And I think, I think there's a lot more things like that now.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people mobilizing, whether it's out of a place like Wild Goose Creative or starting their own DIY art space or their own, music venue. I think even 4 or 5 years ago, there was a lot of stuff that was more rare. Where it's
There's no space, like before Stillwater opened up and all these. A couple other places like that now.
There's been a huge turnover in venues and people. I mean, there have been a lot of people who've moved out of the city, and a lot of other people who have kind of stepped up and taken their place. Really good jobs.
How many of our big bands are from Athens or
I think it's cyclical.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there was a time where I was starting to get really into Columbus music, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. And a lot of the bands that I was really into were kind of brand new.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is amazing. And there was a lot of, I think, people from the older set who were just like, who are these people? What happened to X, Y, and Z?
Right.
And I remember being kind of confused. And I feel like now, like 7 or 8 years later, I kind of feel in a similar position where I'm just like, what about the Nick Tolfords and companies of the world? And like, those bands.
Ghost Shark.
Yeah, those bands are only like 5 years old, but they evolve and devolve and go into different paths.
Is there anything big coming up this summer from now that you think is really interesting?
I think Independence Day.
Always Independence Day.
Yeah, I mean, it's every time.
There's a point where that sounds almost like cliche or redundant, but I mean, it's just really fun to watch. It's just really fun to watch something that was completely organic, completely volunteer driven, especially kind of from like our age set a little bit. And watch it not only be more successful every year, but they're not afraid to tear it apart and bang on it a little bit and try different stuff. And that's really hard to do. It's hard to take something that people every year this is awesome. You'd be really tempted to not tinker with it at all and just slightly. And every year it's even transitioning it from downtown to Franklinton. I personally was just like, damn it. that was such a nice thing downtown. I was kind of mad about it. And then I got there, and within like 5 minutes, you're walking past the Idea Foundry and a skateboard ramp with the PBR painted on it and all these bands
And a
going.
guy rapping.
And I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, and then dude's freestyling, and you're just like, oh, this is amazing. Like, immediately.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's really one of the highlights of the year. I mean, I still love Comfest and a lot of other things, you know, in Columbus, but that one particularly because I feel like it's kind of born of our generation in Columbus and the types of different creative people and the way they kind of overlap. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, well, and I think it just has it has a more narrow demographic than, say, like Comfest or even like the Columbus Arts Fest, things like that.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's a much narrower subset. And I also think it affects certain pockets of town more than others.
Yes.
So it makes sense to me to move to Franklinton. Like that, if you're gonna move anywhere, like that's where you move.
Oh, yeah. And I realized
totally
there were things beyond their control of why they had to move, but I mean, I think the coolest part is that there are people that are absolutely there to party, but almost no one that is there just for that.
Right.
With Comfest, you have just sort of like a kind of like a traditional exodus, maybe even from the suburbs or other parts of Columbus, or you're just gonna kind of let loose. And Independence Day just has a totally different feel, not a better feel, but just
it's just different.
It's very organic. It's very authentic, even though it changes every year.
Well,
Definitely less political.
I don't know about that. I don't think.
Well,
I feel like everything is equally political.
Maybe less overtly so.
Yeah, I think that's the thing right there. But I mean, having worked on both of the festivals, like there are strengths and advantages to how each of them are run, and it makes sense for each of the festivals the way that they do. And I think it actually contributes to making them feel very different. Like Comfest is supposed to be something that's really all inclusive. It's the whole city, and I feel like Independence Day is. It's not, I mean, yes, the whole city is invited, but I feel like it's really for people who want to support independent businesses, independent art, or for people are independent.
Yeah, and music. I mean,
absolutely.
And they got to start themselves as like unabashedly a music first festival.
Yeah,
I think it's even understood. It's
absolutely.
Like, even if you're in like you're selling crafts or you got a food truck, the music is the main event, and there's no qualms about that. And I think that's enabled them to book a lot of acts,
exactly.
You know, like accordingly. I will say, okay, this is going to sound funny, maybe unexpected. It's unexpected I was even going to say this. I'm kind of looking forward to Fashion Meets Music Festival. I really am, because I have a lot of thoughts about it, so do a lot of other people. I have my own criticisms of it. I genuinely would like to, I'm not very good about this sometimes, I genuinely am keeping an open mind and will attend and really try to, like, from a journalistic perspective, be like, okay, what parts of this work and what parts of this don't?
Yeah.
Because Independence Day is a very different thing, has a very different feel. Columbus does have room for and the capacities to support a national music festival of some sort. I don't know if it's going to be this. And whether or not this can evolve into what that festival should be, or whether it has to go away and something has to replace it, just as a person who follows this stuff, I'm very interested to see that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not cheerleading, nor am I negative for it. It's more just sort of like, okay,
it takes 3 years to make it work.
Well, and I think that's the reason why.
Said for that,
but that's the reason why I'm so fascinated, because like if it takes 3 years to make it work, and you completely change the whole format in the second year, what does that mean for the third year? Does that format still hold true? Because it's like, if this year doesn't work, you change it dramatically again for the third year. So I'm interested to see that. And also, you know, there's a lot of bands that I like that are playing that typically, in the way it works for me, are not the headliners.
Yeah.
But there's some
bands. The best shows last year were unabashedly local.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the after parties, you know.
Yeah.
And
Future Islands on Park Street, like that's a pretty cool thing.
The local after parties were even, local bands, the Receiver and Force of the Evergreens.
I will say that I'm a big fan of local fashion, but I have zero interest in anything about local fashion at that festival. I only care about music.
Yeah.
For that festival, because I have so many people that I work with and I love, but it's not an ideal fit. Like, if you go to Bonnaroo, you're probably less likely to want to buy like boutique clothing or T-shirts while you're there. So it's a really, and again, I'm not even saying that negative. I'm just saying I'm really fascinated to watch how that is balanced.
Yeah, if you could balance the
or whether it should be.
Having them on the same stage where you have your band play, and then in between sound checks you have your runway show, you get the people to watch the fashion even.
Maybe,
and
or they're going to get a beer. You don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
But you don't know.
Well, that you'd be more likely to get seen if that was going on. I know that's what people expected last year, and they didn't get.
I don't know. I feel like with all of the negative press that they had last year, whether it was deserved or not, I have no interest in discussing that. I think it gave the festival a certain kind of, I don't know. I just think it kind of put some people off. And I think that this year they've made much, much better booking decisions.
Yes.
I feel like they've been more strategic about their local bands, and if they can kind of show that, that was like
that nobody knows.
And that's true too, but at the same time, like if they can kind of show that, okay, well, our first year was a little bit rough, but we're okay, and give us a chance. I think Columbus is a good city for second chances.
Yeah, I agree.
We're third.
Yeah, and or fifth. What else? It's just.
There's probably a local band called Third Chance. They might even be playing that festival.
If not, we'll make it.
I'm actually kind of excited for that. So.
Yeah. I'm excited for, there's a small one called Creative Control Fest. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, but I forget what it is.
It's like Marshall Short, and I cannot for the life of me remember the other dudes, which I wish I could. But they did it last year, was the first one, I believe, and it was over at the Lincoln Theater.
Okay.
And it was almost like less of a festival, more of a workshop for creatives that were local, and I think that,
that was actually cool.
Yeah.
Because those things can get incredibly uncool, even despite best intentions.
Exactly, but those dudes, they really know what they're doing, and I think that they are really well tapped in, and plus they're just giving out good advice. So I'm going to make an effort to do that this year. I think that's going to be really important, and I want to spend more time over in King Lincoln and at the Lincoln Theater because it's gorgeous in there.
Oh yeah. Past that, honestly, from a comedy standpoint, and to people that also have been in charge of booking shows either for our own entertainment or our own goals or for our jobs, I'm focusing on doing more comedy shows that are both efficient and focused, but also including other art forms, like collaborating with other solo musicians or hip-hop people. I just had a conversation with Tony Collinger, Envelope, last night, and just sort of like comedy and hip-hop. That's just kind of a recent thing, but like comedy and hip-hop are kind of like two talent-laden versions of like Columbus that don't quite have still a proper anchor or hub where people can go find out about it. And so Columbus is a great city for that because, and obviously me and Megan are connected a little bit as a result of our jobs, but it's a city where you can kind of just say like, hey, has anyone ever done a show like this? And before you even ask that question out loud, you just do it. If you feel like it's a good idea and there's other people that are willing to be involved, you just do it. So I'm focusing on doing less traditional shows and or big shows and more things right in between that achieve two goals, which is to merge two art forms or two scenes, and also that are like much more simple in scope. Like, one performer.
Yeah.
It's hip hop, or it's folk, or it's soul, or it's comedy. Maybe there's an interview portion, maybe there's a sketch, I don't know. But doing things like that to kind of mash things together a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that mixed media is getting more and more important, and I think that it's like places like Urban Sprawl. Can't remember if they're doing Go West this year or not.
I think Go West has kind of gone the way of the dodo. With Independence Day and Urban Sprawl in Franklinton.
Yeah, that's a lot of festivals in Franklinton, but I think that's going to be really good. I also think FemFest, super excited to see how they do second year.
It's kind of a fascinating narrative, just the whole thing, like MMF and FemFest.
Well, and I feel like they had art pieces that were available too, so it was another one of those mixed media. It wasn't quite as mixed as some of the other ones, but still really good. Like the Vanderelli Room has been fantastic for mixed media shows.
The Artist Wrestling League.
Oh, cool. Man, those guys.
I did a roast at the Vanderelli Room, which is super fun.
What is the Artist Wrestling League?
Oh my God, the Artist Wrestling League is Ralph Walters and A.J. Vanderelli and Walter Herman and a bunch of the people who are over in the Franklinton area, and they dress up like characters for wrestling.
Like pro wrestling.
Yeah, and then they built a little ring area out of some LED rope lights, so it looks like a wrestling ring, but they have canvases set up, and it's live painting where they get the topic shouted out from the audience, and then whatever that is, they've got like maybe 10 minutes to paint it, but they can mess with each other's canvases.
Yes, and
tackle
each other. And
oh my god,
it's pretty awesome.
The first one they made this.
Honestly, that's a really great.
It is.
That's a great point of like what we're excited about seeing things come out of Columbus. Nobody asked to do that.
No, and that's
it's
the
just
weird thing.
AJ takes over an old church that was an apartment, and then now it's an art gallery, and then pro wrestling. Why not? You know, like I love to see. I mean, you can see all that evolve in a matter of like less than a year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I like the whole attitude. Like, we're Columbus. We do it because we feel like it. It sounded like it was a good idea at the time.
Let's give it a try.
Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's coming out of Franklinton that's been really, really critical to how Columbus is developing. And I don't know, I'm really interested to see how that neighborhood develops, because I think on a whole, it's the oldest neighborhood in Columbus. So it would be nice to, I don't know, not have it be a food desert.
Get a bunch of good stuff out before it floods again.
Yeah, well, and also like provide a sense of community that has been missing there for quite a while. I don't know. I'm just really impressed with how the whole area is lined up. I love it, the Idea Foundry over there.
It's all
doing fantastic.
It's all organic, like I said. It's all authentic.
Yeah,
it's kind of rooted there very easily. What else you got, Ian?
Is any new acts that you can think of coming up that you really think people should be on the lookout for?
I mean, I think she just kind of got it started with Artist Wrestling League. That's something everybody should check out.
Just once, just to say that you've seen it.
Yeah. Comedy-wise, these aren't local acts, but you can see local acts at them. An old friend who used to be a Columbus comic named Dylan Shelton has moved off to New York City and doing comedy. He's booking most of the talent, if not all of it, that you see at Woodlands Tavern. So the last 4 years, people getting to see people like Todd Berry, Kyle Kinane, Amy Schumer, Michael Ian Black, Eugene Merman. All those people are coming to town because a former Columbus kid made those connections, and it's not insignificant. In the talent that's coming in here and finding this middle ground between the Funny Bone and Palace Theater and local bar shows, and it's kind of elevating the local talent as well. Coincidentally, you also had a lot more comedians. I think in the first 10 years I was doing comedy, maybe 3 moved away to make a real legitimate run at comedy in a bigger city, as opposed to being maybe a local road comic. Now, recently, we've had about I'd say a dozen in the last 5 years, including 2 that are getting ready to leave, and they're kind of doing a farewell CD recording at the Garden Theater September 1st. So I'm looking forward to that too. So it's definitely kind of a little bit of a graduating thing for this sort of most recent era of comedy, which as far as my 15 years is the most productive it's been. Now in the past there's been kind of some big stars and a bunch of other, kind of open micers, but this is kind of an interesting time to watch that grow, and I think you can kind of view that through Woodlands Tavern and seeing regional talent that eventually will be good. Schumer being a great example. She did Woodlands Tavern and then the Palace Theater. No Funny Bone, nothing else in between. It was from that to that. So I'm excited about that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but that's it.
There are a couple of photographers in town that are doing really good work. Adam Elkins is probably one of my favorites. He goes by Big Man Japan. Yeah, that dude, he is just... The fact that he's only been, really working with a camera for a single-digit number of years.
Brian Kaiser as well.
And he started out with just a cell phone.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and that he still does a lot of stuff on just the cell phone. And that his work is so well-received. And what I think is really important about Adam is that he's helping to organize these IG or Columbus type things, and he does photo exploration type things, and I feel like it's helping to bring the photography community together a little bit, kind of
But it's helping to build the photography community.
It is.
The people that didn't know that they even wanted to be a photographer find their entry point.
Absolutely. But then you also have people who on the other end of the spectrum, like Tom Dodge, who's worked for the Dispatch for I don't even know how many years, who's going on those things as well. And I mean, you have people who are just coming into it, and they get to interact with each other, and I feel like that's a whole lot of learning.
You bridge that gap.
Yeah, I just feel like there's something really important about that.
We had one of the when it started, we had the largest official group when that started.
Yeah.
That's
like
fantastic.
The first meetup was the largest group in the country.
Well, it's my
Yeah.
understanding that Brian Kaiser, who is kind of like 1A right there with Big Man Japan, he's starting his own business around harnessing those sort of like Instagram brands.
Oh, that's fantastic.
He was
I
doing
didn't know
something
that.
entirely different. And that was just a fun thing. So like now it's going to become an actual like startup
Right.
career for him. So I love watching that stuff happen.
Absolutely. And I don't know, as far as the photography community goes, it's always been really splintered. And I feel like, 10 years ago, the music community started to really kind of come together and make a base for itself and help build it. Everybody, if one band gets better, all the bands get
Right.
better. It's a group effort, and I feel like it hasn't been like that for photography for a long time. But I feel like things like IGers Columbus and the other meetups that people are having, or just like the ability to share pictures the way that we are now.
Yeah, well, the technology has just shored that gap completely.
Absolutely, and it's that in itself has been kind
That's
of
really
amazing
fun to
me.
watch,
Yeah.
especially from an editor's perspective.
Oh yeah.
I can find people who are DJs or musicians who also shoot photos, and they're great. They've got the gear because the price point is less prohibitive, and all of a sudden you've got like, again, it's the same thing where you got like this sort of, you find people they're multimedia people, they're mixed media people. I think that's pretty fun to watch.
You really almost have to be. It's about at some point it's about diversifying your abilities so that you can stay afloat. Especially like, and I don't know if it's the same in music, but with photography, like you gotta have a diverse enough portfolio where you can get paid for something at some point. Because you still got bills to pay and
weddings,
exposure to
bands, graduation photos, all that.
Yeah, and I mean that in itself kind of becomes its own full-time job, and then you have to do your art on top of that for yourself. It's democratized art, a lot of the new technology, but which I think has been fantastic.
That'd be a great way to put it, yeah.
And
because good is still good.
Yeah.
You still have to rise above.
Man, the best camera is the one that you have with you.
Yes.
It's not the nicest and it's not the flashiest. It's the one that you can use and make images that you see in your mind come to reality.
But now you have all those people with a great eye that would have been
Absolutely.
prohibited cost-wise from actually
think it's
even entering
great, man.
into it. I do too.